In this video, we're going to find the unit rate and we're going to find the equation as well for problems 4, 5, and 6. Let's take a look at graph 4 first. Remember, when you're choosing a point, you want to find where the grid lines cross. So that would be a good point to choose. Okay, that looked really messy. Let me try again. This would be a good point to choose where the grid lines cross. And I want you to realize that the lower you go on the graph, usually the easier it's going to be to divide because it's going to be smaller numbers. Instead of using this is 8, 600, sometimes it's going to be easier for people to use 2, 150, or maybe even 4, 300, because the numbers are smaller and easier to divide generally. So I'm going to stick with, I'll use this point right here. It's pretty small. And that point is 4, 300. And I'm going to label it with X, and I'm going to label it with Y, and let's color code. So this is the X-axis. I'll use red for X, and that goes with hours. And then on the Y-axis, we have the 300, which goes with miles. Recall the unit rate formula is K equals Y divided by X. We'll fill in our Y value, which is 300. I'm going to fill in the word miles because Y represents miles. On the X-axis, we have the number 4, and X represents hours. In between, for the fraction bar, I'm going to write the word per, so we know that we're talking about, for unit rate, we're talking about miles per hour. The next step is to take 300 and divide by 4. I'm just going to use this space over here. 300 divided by 4, so let's think about it. 4 goes into 30 how many times? All right, well, if you're not sure, you could start writing out your multiples. So maybe you know 4 times 6 is 24, but you're not sure what 4 times 7 is. We'll just add 6 to 20, or sorry. Add 4, you need another 4 to have 7 4s instead of 6 4s. So we're at 28. Then for 4 times 8, you add another 4 and you get to 32. So you have 8 4s instead of 7 4s. And you can see that 4 times 8 is going to be too much. 4 times 6 is too little. 4 times 7 is great. 28 we can put down here. And then at the top, we're going to fill in a 7. So 4 times 7 is 28. 30 minus 28, we have a remainder of 2. Then you bring down that extra 0. 4 goes into 20. 5 times 4 is 20. You subtract and you're left with 0. And there's no number here to bring down, so we know that we're finished. So the unit rate is 75. And we want to make sure that we write down miles per hour. Typically for miles per hour, people will write mph, so 75 miles per hour. And when you write your equation, I'm filling it into the wrong grid. Let me go over here. So 75 miles per hour, because we were working on graph 4. My work just kind of ended up over here because I ran out of room. And the equation, it looks like this. Y equals, and there's a blank and then an X. In the blank, you're going to fill in the unit rate. So the equation is going to be Y equals 75X. I know these look like they're wavy lines, but I'm having trouble with my pen right now. So that's supposed to say Y equals 75X. I want you to separate that equation in your mind from the unit rate equation. So for unit rate, we use this formula. This is the formula for unit rate. When you're going to write your equation to represent the line that's been graphed, you're going to use this other equation that comes in a different form. So y equals, and you'll always put the unit rate there, and then x afterwards. As we do more examples, this should become easier. Let's look at example 5. I'm going to use x. I'm going to use red for x. I'll put x down there. And then blue for y. Y goes with dollars. Let's see what point I can choose. All right, I like the point 10. And then the 10 goes with 5,000. The formula for unit rate is k equals y divided by x. Remember, unit rate, another word for that is constant of proportionality. In for y, I'm going to put the number 5,000. 5,000 goes with y, and the y goes with dollars. The x value is 10, and 10 goes with years, or x goes with years. And then in between, for the fraction bar, I'm going to put the word per, dollars per hour, and then we're going to divide. I'm going to go to my smart notebook for this. So 5,000 divided by 10. If you divide a number by 10, essentially you are moving the decimal to the left one time. So 5,000 divided by 10 is going to be 500 will be your answer. It's a pattern that you should start getting used to, so that if you have two numbers that end in 0, you should know that you can always divide those two numbers by 10, and it basically gets rid of one of the zeros. So 5,000 divided by 10 is 500. 10 divided by 10, you get 1. And if you look at that over here, 5,000 divided by 10, 10 goes into 50. 5 times 10 is 50. You bring 1 0 down, and you'd say 10 goes into 0. 0 times, you would subtract, and then you would bring down one more 0. 10 goes into this 0, 0 times, and you'll see that if you divide 5,000 by 10, you do get 500. So the unit rate in this example is 500. Let's go back to the Word document. So the unit rate is 500. Let me give myself some room. $500 per hour. And then the equation would be y equals 500x. Remember, all we did was fill in the unit rate in front of the x. A common mistake for students is to write y equals 500 and to forget about this x. So be very careful not to forget the x at the end of the equation. Let's clear this ink and move on to the next example. Example 6. Use blue for y. And then I'll use red for x. Let's go ahead and choose our point. You want a point where the grid lines cross perfectly. I'm going to actually just use this point right here. 1. And if you think about it, if 2 squares equals 100, one of these squares is going to equal 50. So if we count by 50s, it'd be 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300. So this piece right here, if you didn't hear me, was 150. And that goes to an x value of 1. All right, let's write the unit rate formula. K equals Y divided by X. The Y value is 150, and Y goes with beats. And then the X value is 1, and the 1 goes with the word minutes. We write the word per in between. So the answer to this, we just divide. 150 divided by 1 is 150, so we'd write the unit rate is 150 beats per minute. All right, some people think of this as a heart rate, so it could be maybe your heart is racing at 150 beats per minute. Maybe you're exercising and your heart rate is a little bit higher. It could also mean that maybe you're playing a drum and you're able to hit 150 beats per minute. That'd be amazing if you could do that. So 150 beats per minute. And then let's write the equation. The equation is going to be y equals, and in the blank, we're going to fill in the unit rate. So the unit rate goes right here. K goes right there. So the equation is y equals 150x. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is the fact that this point is a very special point. And the reason is this. When we say unit rate, I haven't talked about this yet. It means that we're talking about just one. And basically the idea is that the x value is supposed to be 1. By dividing all of the other ones, we're simplifying it. And we're getting it so that the denominator is 1. And when the x value is 1, I'll write this in another notebook. When x is 1, the y value is the unit rate. So for example, we chose 150, and this was beats here, and this was minutes here. And the idea is that you're supposed to be able to say per 1 minute or 1 unit, how many beats? How many times is your heart beating? So it'd be 150 beats every minute. That's the unit rate. If I were to have chosen a different example, let's say instead that I chose 2 300. So 2 300. And let's go back to the Smart Notebook. 2 300 would end up looking like this. 300 over 2. Well, if I simplify this, they're both divisible by 2, so I can divide them each by 2. 300 divided by 2 is 150, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. If I divide 300 by 2, I get 150. I'm going to end up getting the unit rate. But if you look at this example, I had to simplify. I had to actually take 300 and divide it by 2. If you look at this example, it's special because you don't have to simplify. You already know that 150 divided by 1 is going to be 150. So when the x is 1, you already know that the y value is going to be the unit rate. The unit rate here is going to be 150. So that's sort of a trick of the trade, is that if you can look at the graph and you see that 1 perfectly lines up with a number, you'll know right away what the unit rate is. So 1 goes with 150, I would know right away what the unit rate is. Graph number 3 is also like that. If I would have chosen the point 1, 15, I know right away that where x is 1, y is the unit rate. So the unit rate is 15. because when we take y divided by x, we'd end up having 15 over 1, which just equals 15. In this example, the 1 goes with 10, so I would know right away that the unit rate is 10. Over here, I can see that it looks like 1 goes with 20, so the unit rate would be 20. It's just a trick as you're getting to learn more about unit rate that you can use to check your work.